Good afternoon, and thank you all for choosing to attend the Certified Engagement Compliance Professional, or the CECP Webinar. My name is Madre Godfrey, and I am now the Vice President of Business Development and the Compliance Officer on site here at PACE, and will serve as your moderator today, along with Michelle Schuster, who's our General Counsel of PACE, and Ken Sponsler, who is the Vice President, General Manager of Compliance Point. So it is with our great excitement, a lot of great excitement, that we present you today with PACE's CECP certification program, where you'll learn about earning your credentials. Please be advised that this webinar is being recorded for educational purposes, and the slide deck will be available on the PACE website within 3 to 5 business days at www.paceassociation.com. And you can enter your questions into the chat box field located at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And now let's get started with Michelle.
Hi, Marjorie. I do not have the slides in front of me. I'm sure that's an issue that I had for transition between the previous presentation and this one. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to advance the slides. So right now, what I would like to talk about is the agenda for today. We are very excited at PACE about the CECP program. It is going to be one of a kind as far as a certification for compliance officers and others that are working in the teleservices and contact center field. So we are very excited about this program and very anxious to have it roll out in the fall with its grand introduction at the Washington Leadership Summit at the end of September of this year. Today our goal is to give you an overview of that certification program and what it will require for you to become, or your staff to become, a certified CECP from PACE. The wonderful thing about this certification, as you're going to hear about throughout this presentation, is it really has a lot of meat on the bones. This is a certification program that has a significant body of knowledge associated with it that will have practical application for those working on compliance issues and at the front line of contact centers. It will have that body of knowledge that will be studied through materials that will be provided by PACE. It will be, you will be required to pass an examination in order to become certified, and then there'll be an ongoing certification process that we'll go into details about today. So you'll hear about those program details. We're going to talk about the subject matter that's covered in that body of knowledge that I mentioned. We're going to discuss the resources that will be available to you in order to get your certification and the ongoing maintenance of your certification. We're going to talk about the training and testing, the training that will be available to help prepare you for that test in order to get your CECP. We're going to discuss the fees that are involved with the program and what the real value and benefits of that program are. Next slide. This is a personal certification credential, unlike the self-regulatory organization that PACE also has, that's been a long-standing kind of, better housekeeping seal of approval for contact centers that have made significant investment in compliance and documenting the processes and procedures and reporting associated with compliance on a business level. This is a personal credential or a personal accreditation certification. It is going to be maintained by individuals and not the company itself. So if an individual would leave from one company to another company, that certification would transfer with that individual, and it will be the individual, not the company's responsibility to maintain the certification. When we're talking about customer engagement compliance, we're talking about much more than just teleservices or phone marketing. We're talking about all aspects of contact centers. It most certainly includes calls, but also emails, SMS, MSCM, fax, social media. All of those different mediums of communicating with consumers are included in the certification, and you'll be provided through the body of knowledge with the foundation for processes and procedures associated with those legal requirements in those areas. It also deals with all of the laws associated with those, or deals with the laws that are associated with those mediums of communication, do not call, do not track, how to properly use ATDSs. It's going to deal with not just sales over the telephone, but also inbound, outbound, service, debt collection, informational calls, B2B calls, B2C calls. All of those different mediums and types of communications will be covered by this, by the body of knowledge involved with this certification program. It's a U.S.-based certification program. However, we will also talk about the Canadian requirements, since most companies that are North America-based in the United States are also calling into Canada. We're going to make sure that you are aware of the requirements for Canada. What this certification will also help you with, so, you know, we have the theoretical or this is what the laws say, but also beyond that, it's going to give a foundation for what those written policies and procedures are that are required in order to have an effective compliance program. Excuse me. It's also going to talk about the types of training programs, monitoring, enforcing, and record keeping that's required to have a good program. So I really hope that I'm stressing enough that this is an extremely practical program, and not only will it give you a certification so that you can be recognized for your knowledge in this area, but the knowledge that you obtain is going to have real-world value to you. As far as the program details on the next slide, there will be study materials that will be available this summer, and Maudrey will have more information about that when she speaks, but there will be study materials that will be available. There is a textbook that has been written for this program that's going to have what I've been talking about and calling the body of knowledge in it for the CECP. Once you have studied the training materials and attended training, should you decide to do so, you will then be required to pass a CECP exam. The exam will take several hours to complete. It is, what Ken Sponsler said, it was a no-joke exam, I think, the last time we did this presentation. It will require you to study in order to pass the exam, and it will be very comprehensive in nature. Once you've passed that exam and you've received your CECP credentials, those are going to be valid for 3 years. And in order to become recertified at the end of that 3 years, you will have been required to have maintained a continuing education base and be able to log those continuing education credits through the PACE website. So there'll be a number of different ways that we'll talk about that you can get those CEs, but those will be maintained through the PACE website, and that's how you'll be able to demonstrate your compliance. There will be 10 credit hours that will be required. There will be a number of different ways, as I said, that you can get that continuing education. A few of them are listed on this slide, including attendance at the annual meeting, in which we have lots of compliance information available that we'll have CE units for. Also, the Washington Leadership Summit, chapter events, and other PACE-type events and other educational materials and training sessions. The new credentials are awarded, as I said, every 3 years. And with that, Maudrey, I think that's where you pick up to talk about the substance of what that body of knowledge involves for the CECP accreditation.
Absolutely, and a lot of it actually is going to piggyback off of the resource guide that is going to be available again this summer, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a later slide. But definitely, we want to dive right into subject matter of that awesome resource book. So literally, in the rapidly evolving field of compliance and ethics, this particular CECP will serve as a standard in the customer engagement compliance world. Achieving this particular designation demonstrates a comprehensive knowledge of engagement tenets and practices, whether you are an individual seeking to distinguish yourself from others in the field, or if there's an organization that's looking to demonstrate your commitment to customer engagement and contact center compliance. This particular certification through PACE, we can help you with that success. And in doing so, we've diligently worked with some of the top subject matter experts in the country to develop this comprehensive resource guide that's a vital part of this particular certification program. The outline, obviously, is listed here on the slide deck. You'll get to know a whole lot about how we're involved, our advocacy and education pieces, how we can help you to succeed, the table of contents, of course, your preface or your forward, acknowledgments, history of this particular program, and an introduction. I do want to dive into the body of knowledge or the knowledge tenets and the consistency for each one of the customer engagement channel sections once we get into them. This indispensable resource guide is all of the compliance officers is for all compliance officers working in the customer engagement and customer contact compliance U.S. and Canadian private sectors, and serve as the principal body of knowledge that Michelle had actually mentioned earlier for this particular program. And these tenets are so important because they're going to be, again, consistent and repetitive for each one of the customer engagement sections that we're going to learn about a little later on. The role of the compliance officer, knowledge of the regulations and rules and laws, not only under the FTC's umbrella, but specific to, obviously, customer engagement. Development of policies and procedures, training, M&E considerations, as well as record-keeping requirements. So the regulatory environment within the customer engagement arena is ever-changing, and having a solid understanding of these federal and state laws, rules, and regulations that govern the industry as a whole will certainly help to strengthen the compliance officer's path to running a successful compliance program. Subject matter in this particular section will cover the FTC's and the FCC's many active consumer protection acts, the roles of the state attorney general, the PUCs, or the Public Utility Commissions, and lastly, private litigants and class actions that made a significant impact in this particular industry. The intent behind the corporate compliance is to protect organizations from potential situations of waste, fraud, and abuse, either intentional or intentional, especially if it involves an audit or a federal investigation. I think in this industry we know it better as a CID or a civil investigation demand. So a well-defined corporate compliance program will assist an organization and its employees to deter and, kind of detect illegal and unethical activity. So in this particular section of the program, candidates will gain specific knowledge of the definitions of safe harbors and how to build and maintain specific marketing channels, safe harbors, within the compliance program itself, as well as the role of the compliance officer in today's regulatory environment. And everyone knows that the regulatory environment is an ever-changing environment as well. Specifically, it'll be covering safe harbors for calling, inbound calling, outbound calling, texts, emailing, those channels that actually are very popular and more popular and ever growing in this particular industry as well. So by establishing good compliance policies and procedures from the beginning, the compliance officer will have a compliance program that evolves and grows along with the business and is flexible to adapt to the regulatory changes in the industry today. However, if the training program is developed as a part of the foundation of the compliance program, it will be available when new personnel is added. In this section, the candidate will understand the fundamental tenets of structuring and maintaining the organization's compliance guidelines. Policies and procedures and compliance guidelines kind of go hand in hand when you're trying to build the foundations, obviously, and I think everybody on the phone call should probably be aware of this, but definitely when you're trying to build some type of policy or procedure or the program itself. This particular section will then cover the hows, whos, whats, whens, and wheres of how to build a compliance guideline or how to build compliance guidelines. Critical path analysis. This is another subject matter that you'll be covering in the book as well. A compliance officer must develop a company's critical path analysis. A critical path analysis should identify the critical compliance events and develop a risk mitigation plan to combat them all. Critical events include those policies or procedures that will expose the company to risk, and they should fail to occur as designed. I'm sorry, I lost my place on that one, guys. But some examples of these types of events would include your DNC and wireless list downloads, your DNC and wireless list suppressions, your campaign management on the dialers, updates and suppressions of DNC or opt-out lists, and then telemarketer registration updates and reporting requirements. So, Ken, if you're listening on the call right now, can you touch a little bit on this, please? Sponsor.
That sounded like a Bueller. I can talk a little bit about the risk mitigation plan.
You can talk a little bit about that critical path analysis a little bit and dwell on it a little bit, hon.
Absolutely. And, Marjorie, although she didn't provide her background when she got on the phone, I think it is very much worth mentioning that Marjorie, in her previous position, was responsible for all external audits and was the compliance officer in that capacity and has a tremendous amount of knowledge in this area. So for those of you that will have questions about the CECP or even about the body of knowledge, Marjorie is an excellent resource. We're very lucky to have her as we start unrolling this new certification program. So, as far as developing a risk mitigation plan, this is what you do in advance of initiating any procedure within the contact center. You need to have a fail-safe so that when you're instituting procedures, you will know if there's an issue. So it requires that you have management supervision, that you have redundant processes, and obviously the purpose of that is so that you have a fail-safe and a way of identifying issues that might present themselves. And then it's very important that you have manager sign-off and verification, and by doing that, you know that there will not be changes in the procedure unless you've had that management level sign off in that regard. So risk mitigation plans in advance of actually engaging in the processes and procedures is very critical, and this will be a wonderful part of the subject matter body of knowledge and the certification program.
Perfect. Thanks, Michelle. So we're going to go ahead and move on. We're going to move on to the compliance program development. I'm sorry, I may have gone too far here. Yeah, critical path analysis. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and go on, I'm sorry about that, to the compliance program development piece. So the tenets of the compliance program development section will basically provide the candidate with the elements of effective customer engagement and customer-centered compliance that aligns with the regulatory requirements. Anybody who knows the TSR very well will definitely recognize these developments, or the training develops, the monitoring enforcement, the record retention piece, as well as the consumer complaint management. All of these are going to be a part of the subject matter for this particular program, and it will go in deeper in regards to the new hire training, the refresher training, the proof of learning. There'll be tests involved, and I think that everybody will be fully prepared for the testing portion after making sure that this section is built out. So let's dive right into the customer engagement channel. These are literally the meat and potatoes of the entire program. We want to make sure that technology is, making it easier to deliver the right message at the right time through the right channels, and the changing regulatory landscape is adding new layers of complexity. With that, while managing our customer engagement strategies for the customer service, fraud detection, marketing, and debt collection, companies now face a number of regulatory landmines. How the compliance officer handles these regulations depends on the number of factors. Regulations vary by, communications type, and that's what the big deal is. It's communications types, and always vary according to where you send the message and how you got the message to the consumer, and the purpose of the communications, and whether the contact is permission-based. So the customer engagement channel U.S. will provide the candidate with overviews, channel regulations, policies and procedure considerations, training suggestions, and much, much more. Keep in mind that this particular learning in this subject matter covers full customer engagement from the generation of the lead to the sale, all the way to the customer follow-up or the information. Okay? So let's dive in with the overview of the various customer engagement channel sections. Starting with the telephone. You'll get a high-level overview, a specific overview actually in the informational section. And then within the book itself, you'll learn what sections of the telephone engagement apply. B2B, the exact same thing. We'll get that overview of the B2B. We'll get that overview also of the inbound dials. Each one of them has their own telephone engagement section within the book as well. Another channel that's going to probably have a lot more meat and definitely will be a lot more involved will be the outbound solicitation B2C calls. Obviously, we are going to dwell a lot on the DNC list, intro and history of the DNC list. So we're going to get a little bit of history and foundation of the DNC list in the U.S., how it was created, why it was created, whether it was created obviously to protect the consumer or not. The knowledge of the regulations, obviously, on a federal and a state level will be covered. Intro DNC list will be recorded as well. Policies and procedures. We'll review distinctly the policies and procedures, how the compliance officer or that person that's going to be in charge of this, or the candidate rather, would have a list, the access of the scheduling. Suppression policies and campaign management is huge for the outbound solicitation. And then we will provide also the training, the M&E considerations, and record-keeping requirements. And that's going to be the standard. I think I said that earlier. That's going to be the standard, the training, the M&E considerations, and the record-keeping requirements for every one of the principal foundations or the tenets of each one of these customer engagement channels. It's very important that each one of these are understood because there are different considerations for each one of them, if not different requirements for each one of them. Yet there is some redundancy with each one of them as well, with your training, your M&E considerations, and your record keeping. Calls to wireless numbers. If you were on the previous webinar, obviously there are some changes that are coming about, but at the same time, this particular section of our training will provide for that candidate a summary of regulations, everything from the ATDS to the manual dialing systems, and then the policies and procedures and the regular redundancy with the other ones. But what's so important about the calls to wireless numbers, I think that everybody on the call probably have been exposed to the October 13th, the October 2013 changes with the TCPA, and so definitely it will be specific to, the training rather will be specific to what's important when it comes to those particular cell phone regulations and rules and the how-tos, and how to build safe harbors and how to be safe. So it's very important that this particular section is clearly understood. And I think that the information that's going to be provided within the resource guide definitely is going to give you everything that you need to be successful. Another section, do not call policies and procedures. You'll learn DNC policies. You'll learn the telemarketing guidelines. You will also learn call attempts and calling times. Again, all of this would align clearly with the TSR and then be tested definitely on the TCPA as well. Very important, script creation and review. My experience has said to me many times that, and also has proven to me many times, that there are call center compliance officers, if not call center managers, that are not aware that there are specific federal and state rules to language disclosures for your scripting. I think that this is definitely a very important section of the book for compliance officers or candidates that we're not aware of script creation and reviews and how important it is ensure that your federal and your state-specific languages and disclosures are captured within those particular scripts, and making sure and ensuring that all of the information that is required is accepted and also passes through some type of, I would probably say some type of process where it's approved, not only by the compliance officer but also the legal department. What we're going to do is we're going to teach that candidate how to create the script, how to review the script, how to make sure that all of that language is actually captured and disclosed within the information that's given. And again, the redundancy, again, you'll get your summary of regulations, your policies and procedures to consider, training suggestions, monitoring and enforcement considerations, as well as record keeper requirements. Record keeper requirements could be different, on every level, on every state level, but then we will give you the information that you would need in order to make sure that you would have that knowledge. Federal and state unfair and deceptive acts, practices, and laws. Specifics to that will also be in this particular sections: unfair, deceptive, your material representation, and your substantiations. Each one of these subsections will have not only the definition, but also it will have specifics and examples as to what these practices are and how we can definitely be proactive in deterring these types of things from happening. The use of the word free. There's a federal definition of the use of the word free, but there's also other states who also have some type of rule or regulation as to using their words free in advertising and marketing, using the word free in advertising and marketing in their particular state as well. The subject matter will take you through those specific details, along with, of course, your redundant, again, your summary of regulations down to your record-keeping requirements. Consent to call monitoring. Subject matter will be specific to that and as redundant with the summary of regulations down through the record-keeping requirements as well. Free-to-pay and novel payment methods. As you can see, a lot of the subject matter actually follows, yet again, the TSR requirements and specifics to the TSR requirements. Again, the subject matter and the information in the books that will be given out definitely, the resource guide, definitely will take you step by step on what you need to know in order to be an effective compliance officer within the organization or, again, your personal process. Telemarketer registrations. Even though the redundancy of the learning is there, specifics to the telemarketer registrations on a state level, you will get the candidate will get an opportunity to learn specifics to inbound and outbound dialing into and out of a state. This will be specific to rules and regulations that are, again, state-specific, and you'll get the opportunity to know exactly how to put wrap policies and procedures around when to ensure that your call center or your contact center compliance is there and present for any type of state investigation. IT infrastructure, dialer technology. When presenting the different dialing methods and technologies available, I do believe that there have been all of the dialer companies have either created one way or another their solution to the TCPA rule, but in this particular subject matter, we will be giving you specifics on the different types of dialing methods that meet those particular, that meets the TCPA rule. Implications related to the ATDS and contact center management. Campaign management is also extremely important when you are using a dialer, and we will give you details in that particular training as well. Caller ID and calling times. Again, aligning with the TSR, you'll see the redundancy and learning the specifics, definitions, along with how to comply with both of those particular rules. In addition to, again, we talk about the redundancy of the summary of regulations and policies and procedures down to the record-keeping requirements. So by the time we finish with all of the subject matter, the actual subject matter, and everything that actually is attached to it, then the compliance officer or the candidate will definitely understand and know all specifics to every one of the headers that are involved. They should be on slide 22. Okay, call abandonment. And I'm sorry, somebody just walked in. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. Call abandonment would be another subject matter that will be covered in the training information. Again, part of the TSR. Again, the redundancy is there. You're going to get the definition of call abandonment. You'll get the summary of the regulation as well, along with everything under that umbrella down to the recording recommendations. I'm sorry, the record-keeping requirements. So it is definitely may seem a little redundant, but at the same time, when you know that you're getting all of this, the substance of each one of the titles, then it does maybe seem to be a little bit redundant, but at the same time, there will be a lot to each and every one of them. Monitoring enforcement, what you learn under that particular umbrella will definitely be the role of the compliance officer and how to create an effective monitoring and enforcement program. Quality assurance, compliance monitoring, data audits through a company that is experienced and also an expert in how to audit that particular data, how to get back the pertinent information that you need, make good quality calls, how to upload them into dialers, things of that sort if you're using ATDS, if not the manual dialing system, but all of the substance that you would need under the monitoring enforcement program umbrella to, again, run a clear and clean monitoring enforcement program. And with that being said, that monitoring enforcement program should be proactive, and the candidate will learn how to be proactive and how to monitor and how to deter. Because, of course, you know, there's a preventative factor to it, but definitely the how to deter and the look for. So basically what the candidate will be learning is exactly what to look for under a monitoring enforcement program to help the company to stay safe. Debt collection. Well, we'll definitely, it'll be debt collection definitely will be something that falls under the customer engagement umbrella and definitely under this engagement channel. We'll learn the true definition of debt collection, along with the summary of regulations, policies, and procedures considered. Same redundancy, but of course differently under that particular sector. We'll learn TCPA along with along with the TSR rules and regulations for that particular subject matter. Pre-recorded messages. Again, we've talked about that probably for about 2 years now. All of the regulations, the laws that are tied to that under the TCPA, but we will get a little bit more specific in the do's and the don'ts regarding that summary of regulations, and then, of course, we continue with the redundancy down to the record-keeping requirements as well. So the redundancy from the summary of regulations down to the record-keeping requirements, those are going to be your principal knowledge, your tenets that are so important that it will help the compliance officer to definitely know and how to build this particular program and how to run this particular program. So, text messaging would be the next slide. And I was just told that the slides aren't advancing. Is everyone seeing exactly what I am seeing? I should be on, like, slide number 24.
Yes. The slides are coming through correctly, Marcia.
They are coming through correctly. Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure, because I just got a note drop. So I just want to make sure that everybody is seeing the exact same thing that we're seeing. Perfect. All righty. So moving right along with our customer engagement channels, text messaging. Text messaging, both informational for B2B as well as the B2C solicitous text. Will be covered, high-level overviews of both of all of them actually, the informational B2B and the B2C text, solicitous and non-solicitous, will be covered. The training will, again, consist of that redundancy that we talked about, but also in addition to that, you will be actually going to the sections of the text engagements and learning how to apply and where to apply. Obviously, text messaging rules different from telephone rules, but some overlap a little bit in knowing that the text messaging is also being governed by the exact same federal laws, some of them the exact same federal laws. So under that text engagement section, the candidate will be learning specifics to both information again and also solicitous text messaging. Facsimile, though a little outdated, we felt it necessary and also very, very important that the candidate is fully engaged, if not fully presented with the learning of informational B2B and solicitous B2C faxes. Even though, again, a little outdated, there are some companies that are still using this type of channel, and we wanted to make sure that the candidate was very, very aware as well as fully trained on these types of channels, and definitely that even though they still exist in some prehistoric land, we still want to make sure that all the information is still given and trained upon and tested upon, and that there definitely is a subject matter expert just in case this particular area comes about. Emailing, one of the more popular customer engagement channels, and becoming, obviously, along with digital marketing, becoming more and more popular and bigger. We will learn through this training specific informational and, again, B2B, solicitous B2C emails, all of the regulations and the redundancy that we've had throughout the entire subject matter detail, down to the record-keeping requirements. What has happened? Down to the record keeper requirements, and also the sections of the email engagements that apply. So all of that will be included in this particular training section for the emails. So that's some exciting stuff, especially in the land of digital. MSCM, same thing there. We'll learn the definitions along with the regulations and down to the record keeping, as well as social media. So we're getting into, again, the world of digital, which is ever-changing. So just knowing that foundation, the candidates will definitely get to understand and know definition and a little bit of the summary of regulations. So that's going to be really, really critical with those companies that have big marketing budgets and that are moving towards these big marketing campaigns, social media campaigns, and these digital campaigns that are going to be a little bit costly. We always want to make sure that that training and that foundation is there for the candidate and or for the compliance officer, and ensure that that knowledge is there, so that they can guide that chief marketing officer or that marketing manager in the right direction and to ensure that the company is safe in their marketing efforts. One of the most popular digital media channels in the world, online. And so we want to make sure that the training is available and specific to Do Not Track. The regulations also that align with Do Not Track, specifics to Do Not Track. We want to make sure that within this training that the candidate clearly understands all of the online do's and don'ts that align with the rules and regulations for this particular channel. And so the redundancy is there as well with the policies and procedures down to the record-keeping requirements. And again, the candidate will be a subject matter expert, obviously, in these particular areas once they get their certifications. So we've talked about all of the customer engagement channels within the U.S., and when we jump over into the Canadian portion, or the Canadian private sector, then you will see that we will be providing the training for the candidate and will be basically providing the same structure as the U.S. section. We'll make sure that the telephone, text, fax, email, MSCM, social media, and definitely the online track is available and also specific to the candidate in the training. But, of course, the only difference would be, and I think that this is very, very clear, the only difference would be that all of the training will be towards the Canadian rules and regulations and ensuring that that is very, very clear and that, that the Canadians definitely have some different information, but yet and still the tenets and the principles will be aligned accordingly. And when we talk about the collection of the opt-ins and the consumer preferences and vendor management, this will be all-encompassing. The subject matter details and the training definitely all-encompassing. I think I spoke about it earlier. We'll be covering from the beginning of the customer engagement, starting with the lead source, all the way down to the maybe the customer survey, if there's a customer survey available, but all the way down to the the informational pieces of the through the sale. It's very important that the candidate understands the collection of the opt-ins and customer preferences, strategies of record keeping, and definitely the benefits of it. But the specifics to that will be covered in all of the training material that will become available. Vendor management. What's very, very important about this is that lead generators and outsourced customers, under this particular umbrella, the candidate will clearly understand that lead generators are just as responsible and accountable for their leads as well as their call center compliance and things of that sort. But we will talk specifically to vicarious liability as well as vendor monitoring for the company, because there has been, district courts and other courts out there that has definitely said that, that have definitely declared, rather, that vicarious liability came in and the big company or the brand company was fully accountable or responsible for their vendors' activities. And it's very important for the candidate to clearly understand and know that this is a possibility and be able to manage that accordingly. Contracts and quality assurance under that vendor management will also be covered. And quality assurance is bigger than just call recording, but also analytics and reporting under that umbrella as well will be covered under that vendor management umbrella as well. Enforcement management, I do believe, probably speaks for itself. We will definitely allow the candidate in this particular section to study and know about that information that's critical to success of the enforcement portion of the monitoring and enforcement program, and how to really, enforce some of those that information that's being given through that particular program. They'll learn under this umbrella enforcement by channel. Under this particular section, they will also learn the investigation of vehicles to consider, tips on how to respond. One of the things that we have heard in the industry while I was traveling around the country is that responding immediately to any government, any private right of action, and any class action or CID or investigation, responding immediately would be the best thing to do, rather than probably sitting on that particular issue or anything like that. So for sure, this particular piece of the training will provide for the candidate all types of tips to respond to any type of CID or investigative demand. Fines and penalties under the U.S. and Canada and the private right action will also be covered extensively under this particular section of the program. So, Michelle, if you want to go into the PACE regulatory organization and what we provide and things of that sort, along with the PACE regulatory guide. Yep.
So I mentioned earlier the self-regulatory organization. One of the subjects in the guide, which is a convenient opportunity for me to talk about the SRO, is the SRO. And As most of you are probably aware on the phone, the Self-Regulatory Organization Accreditation through PACE certifies that a company has met the legal requirements and the best practices for telemarketing inbound and outbound contact centers. It is a review of the processes and procedures that are in place at the time of the audit, at that point in time, and a company that is accredited is able to establish that they have all of the correct policies and procedures in place to meet the regulatory requirements and PACE's best practices. There are several sellers out there that use the PACE SRO as a way of bringing on board bringing on new vendors for their teleservices operations, and if you are not SRO accredited, they require some other type of special accreditation before hiring those contact centers. So it's got a lot of value to it. It's compliance in a box is what I like to say, so that a company that goes through the SRO process knows that they have all of the processes and procedures in place required to comply with the law. The CECP materials will go through the key components of what's involved with the SRO regulatory or accreditation process. It takes you through the procedures for achieving that accreditation and what the compliance officer's role is in shepherding the company through the SRO accreditation. So anybody who is interested in going through the SRO accreditation process and you have a compliance officer or you are the compliance officer who will be leading that charge for the company, the CECP is an excellent complement to that SRO process and will prepare you to lead your organization through the process. Another critical component to getting the CECP and also to the SRO regulatory process is the PACE regulatory guide. Our office is currently the author of that regulatory guide. The regulatory guide, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, goes through the federal laws, the TCPA, TSR, the Communications Act, so the federal laws that apply to the teleservices industry, as well as each of the state laws. It provides a summary of those regulations and then actually provides you with a link to the regulation itself so that you can review those. Regulatory guide is a wonderful resource and I really think is something that every compliance officer must have in order to effectively do their job. The regulatory guide also does a nice job of breaking down the legal requirements by subject matter. So let's say that you wanted to know what states have more rigorous requirements than the TCPA for calls to cell phones. Well, you could go to the regulatory guide and look up predictive dialer ATDS requirements, and it would tell you which states have more restrictive requirements, and that's done in a topical analysis, so very easy to use and implement. Those folks that are going through the CECP are going to have access to the regulatory guide, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So, Madre, you want to take that?
Yep. Yes. So the certification resources that will be available here soon will include the Compliance Officer Resource Guide, subject matter presentations with audio and CDs. We will provide for you a recommended reading list. There will be a store within that particular website that will provide for you, again, that recommended reading list, and the books will be available. PACE Regulatory Guide, of course, will be available to you. There will be a 90-day free subscription. And then your practice examinations, as well as your networking opportunities. And those networking opportunities could, of course, come through chapter events through PACE, webinar events through PACE, of course, the national conference in the spring, as well as the fall summit, which is coming up here soon in Washington, D.C. In September. So those, again, resource guides will be available to you soon here. We've got live on-site testing here available soon again. And this information will come out in notification from PACE, directly from PACE, probably within the next few weeks for you. There will be 2 days of live training. Those 2 days of live training will take place at either the Washington Summit in the fall again, or the annual convention and expo in the spring. And then we will align some of those 2-day live events also with some of the chapter-sponsored events. So we'll be sending out that email information, if not notifications, through PACE as well. PACE is really taking on a lot of or most of the forefront of this particular program or this certification. So we will keep you well informed on the live events and the live trainings and all of the continuing education pieces as well. Testing will be available at those particular live training events. So you'll go to 2 days of training, and then on that third day, the testing will be fully available to the candidates. Multiple choice, true and false, will be the template of the training, and the examination will last for approximately 2 hours. I cannot give you the amount of questions at this point, nor can I give you the amount of, multiple choice questions versus true or false questions. But the candidate should be prepared for both, obviously, and be prepared for a full 2-hour exam. Currently, the certification materials along with the registration will be available in mid-July. So probably, again, within the next maybe 5 to 6 weeks, we will have it available, and we'll be launching all of the information on the PACE website. So again, look for those notifications and those emails to come directly to your email box, and it'll be, of course, loaded with excitement because we're really, really excited about this particular program. Michelle, you want to go over the fees?
Sure. So the certification fees are on the slide. There is a benefit to being a PACE member. You'll notice that the fees are more expensive for non-members, and we most certainly wanted to give PACE members an advantage when it came to going through the certification process and how much that costs. The training is going to be approximately $450. If you're going to do on-site training or in-person training, there'll be other training materials that will be recorded or online materials that will be available for $150. And I'm sorry, I'm giving you the non-member. I mean to be giving you the member prices. $375 for on-site training, $125 for web training. The Compliance Officer Resource Guide, which is the book that contains the body of knowledge, will be available for purchase for $100. The recommended reading list, access to the regulatory guide, practice test are all going to be included with your registration cost. The final exam is $375 for members, $675 for non-members. If you have to retake the exam, it's $150, and the maintenance fee for recertifying after for the annual certification is included in the cost for members. So those fees will be posted on the PACE website and available when you register for the certification. The benefit of this program is going to be substantial. By becoming a certified compliance professional, you'll be recognized as having met the requirements for knowledge for compliance officers in this area. It's going to increase your knowledge just by the fact that you have a comprehensive source of materials that you can review in preparing you for the testing and for learning the body of knowledge is something that is not currently available for compliance officers. I frequently get asked by clients what they can do to provide education for their compliance officers, and I always recommend that they join certain LinkedIn groups and read certain blogs and that they attend compliance training that PACE puts on. But beyond that, there's really nothing that was a comprehensive body of knowledge. So that will be a huge benefit of this certification program. We would hope that employers will see this as a compliance officer going beyond, above and beyond the call of duty, and that would be looked at in the form of enhanced career opportunities and promotions. Also, you'll be a member of a somewhat elite group of folks that have received this certification and part of that professional network. And we all know that one of the big benefits of PACE membership and these types of certifications is that you have access to other people that have gone through the process and folks that you can turn to when you have questions. You know, for the organization, you have that individual that has that body of knowledge, and they will be able to better perform their duties based on having additional knowledge in the area. The organization will be able to represent to its clients that they have somebody in that position that's met the PACE certification requirements for the CECP. It's a substantial investment in due diligence for companies. Having somebody who's knowledgeable in the compliance officer area with this breadth of knowledge is just so critical, you know, so that they can be the person that identifies issues, even if they don't know the exact right legal position or answer, which we wouldn't expect every compliance officer, even any compliance officer, to be able to do. They're going to be able to identify issues and bring those to general counsel and managers. So all of those things are critical to having a compliance officer that is confidently doing their job. So we are very hopeful that we will have a large participation in the initial class that will be trained at the Washington Leadership Summit. There will be a group of us that will be going through this process before the Washington Leadership Summit, but that will mostly be folks that have been involved with the development of the program and folks that are going to be trainers in this program. So the first class that will be available for the group at large will be at the end of September. I highly recommend that you be among that first group and that you get your accreditation or get that accreditation for your compliance officer. There are so many benefits to be able to say that you're a certified compliance professional. Marjorie, I think that might take us to the end in questions. There is a copy of the certificate that will be awarded once you have passed the test. And I think now we're open for questions.
Well, Michelle, I'd like to just mention something here quickly. One of the comments that I saw in the chat window was a couple of people are saying that, you know, CIPP sounds like there's some overlap on some topic. Having undergone CIPP certification myself, I can tell you that there is virtually very little similarity between this program and CIPP. CIPP's focus is largely on privacy, data security issues with some marketing in there, yes, but this is completely focused on consumer contact issues directly, and it's wholly focused on that. So there is a lot more focused information about that in our program than CIPP is. A very different program.
Yes, that was actually I have one more question, and the question is, can we still attend the Washington conference and participate in the on-site training as well?
Sure, and not take the test? I'm assuming that's what the question is.
It seems like that's the question, Michelle.
Yeah, so let me explain that. The CECP training will be done in advance of the Washington Leadership Summit. The final details are being worked out now, but as it stands, the Washington Leadership Summit starts on, and I'm going to get the date wrong, but it's Sunday, September 25th, I believe, and it runs through Tuesday. Nope, I'm looking at October. Sunday, September 27th, and it runs through September 29th. The training for the CECP will take place the 2 days prior to Washington Summit, so absolutely there won't be any overlap. The training will take place immediately before the summit, and then the testing will be immediately after the summit. It looks like because Tuesday is a half day that the testing will be done Tuesday afternoon, but don't quote me on that. We'll get the final times and dates out well in advance of the Washington Leadership Summit, but one is not contingent upon the other, but we think that they nicely complement each other, and there'll be lots of folks that are interested in attending both.
Yeah, so definitely the second part of that question was, do they overlap? So I think that you covered that. Okay, and again, just to piggyback that, I did mention earlier that I would be making sure that the email communication along with the notifications in regards to the CECP, specifics to the times, the dates, the availability of the website information and content, along with the specific training guide, the store, books information and things of that sort would definitely come out in advance of July 15th. I do believe that the deadline is going to be mid-July, somewhere between the 15th and the 30th. I'm not sure yet, but we'll make sure that we get that notification and information out to the public. I do have a message here that says we would like you to know that most of us did not see the presentation because we did not have the slides. It looks like for those who were actually in the previous webinar with FCC webinar with Michelle and Nick, if you did not log out of that particular webinar and didn't receive the link to log into this webinar, then I will be generous enough, of course, to make sure that you get this presentation or the slides in your email box once we get done. I apologize for that, but the link was supposed to have gotten sent out immediately. One more question, and then we'll have to end. And it is live training mandatory, or can I still get the certification if I can't take it to the on-site training?
So live training is not required. It is offered, and we think there will be a benefit to having that live interaction. But the materials that will be available online will allow you to review all of the materials that you need to study for the examination, and there'll be practice tests as well that'll help you to study for the examination. So the short answer is no, and the online materials will certainly give you everything you need to pass the exam and become certified.
Okay. And then one last question before we go. Will the slides be sent to everyone? The slides will be sent to everyone that attended this particular webinar. Yes, they will. Okay. And that looks like that's it for questions. I do appreciate everyone's attendance. I appreciate their patience. There's a lot of excitement being generated around this particular certification program. Again, we are going to put our all into ensuring that this is successful, and it's very, very important that you future compliance officers, if not already compliance officers, know that this credentialing is extremely, important and critical to the success of your organization, if not, critical to yourself, and knowing that, you are growing and that this particular program will definitely help you to grow inside and out. So I definitely am a full-blown 100% supporter of it. Michelle and Ken, you've done a great job. I appreciate everybody's hard work that they put into this, and you guys have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.